Namaste. Welcome to Hindu Center's first ever Hinduism Alive session. My name is Anuradha and I'm a volunteer at the Hindu Center. Before we start today's session, I'd like to say a prayer. Om, Om, Om. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarva Karyeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hinduism Alive is a new initiative by the Hindu Center where we showcase how Hindu teachings find their way to everyday life, be it through scriptures, music, dance, novels, and films. We are very happy to have, in the very first session, MC Vaijayanthi talk to us about Bhakti in Ponnian Selvan. Recently, the movie PS1 came and it was a big hit. But this movie was based on the novel by Kalki, Ponnian Selvan. The novel is based again on the life of the great Chola king Rajaraja Chola. And Kalki not only brings to life the political conditions of those times, but also the religious milieu. MC Vaijayanthi is going to talk to us about this. Before I hand over the mic to Vaijayanthi, I'd like to introduce her to you. Vaijayanthi is a journalist, blogger, heritage photographer, and handloom expert. She has researched on Araiyar Sevai, a Vaishnava devotional performing arts tradition, as the Justice Telang Fellow in Indology in 2017 and 18. This fellowship was initiated by the famous Asiatic Society of Mumbai. She has also presented many papers on Hindu temples, festivals, and yatras at various seminars. In this talk, she will be discussing about the elements of Bhakti or devotion in the novel Ponnian Selvan. Welcome, Vaijayanthi.
Thank you. Namaste, namaskarams to all. Thank you, Hindu Center, for this initiative and also inviting me, accepting this topic, and Anuradha for making a small conversation into a full-fledged paper. That is how this topic was suggested and the topic came up and all that. Hope I do justice to the topic that I have taken up for today. Let me start. Hope you're all able to see the screen.
Yeah, we can see.
Can we start?
Please go ahead. I just want to say that the talk will be for a little bit more than an hour. And towards the end, like maybe the last 5-10 minutes, we will take some questions. So please put your questions in the chat box or on YouTube or Facebook. Please go ahead, Vaijayanthi.
Thank you. ஓங்கி உலகளந்த உத்தமன் பேர்பாடி நாங்கள் நம்பாவைக்கு சாற்றினீராடினால் தேங்கின்றி நாடெல்லாம் திங்கள் மும்மாறி பெய்து ஓங்கு பெருஞ்சென்னலூடு கைலுகுல பூங்குவளை போதில் பொறிவண்டு கண்படுப்ப தேங்காதே புக்கிருந்து சீர்த்த முலை பற்றி வாங்க குடம் நிறைக்கும் வள்ளல் பெரும்பசுக்கள் நீங்காத செல்வம் நிறைந்தேளோ என்பாவார். I am going to share today what little I gleaned from rereading of Kalki's magnum opus Ponnian Selvan recently. As Anuradha said, the topic obviously has come up because of the movie Ponnian Selvan PS1, the reception to the movie worldwide, and the interest it has kindled among all across the nation about the Chola dynasty and Rajaraja Chola in particular. While the world is appreciative of the fact that a mighty Tamil king has been portrayed on the silver screen, we felt that there is one missing thread in it. It is the overtone of Bhakti. It pervades and beautifully runs the course through the length and breadth of the novel. We all know that Ponnian Selvan is a historical fiction set in the time of the medieval Cholas from the 9th to 13th century Common Era, when their empire building reached a crescendo, waiting for the crown jewel Arulmozhivarman or Rajaraja Chola to take over the reins. That was also the time when the Renaissance period, that is the Renaissance temple period for the temples began, when the mud brick temples were converted into the stronger, more permanent granite structures, and the bronze vigrahas, the Chola bronzes as we know today, got enshrined in the temples, culminating in the grand Brihadishwara temple at Tanjavur. Chanting of Tevaram, Divya Prabandhams, dance, music, and the overall culture to which temples became the center took shape too. And for 1,000 years and 1,000 years later today, we still have all the temples and the rituals and practices in place. If Tanjavur stands magnificent as the crowning glory of Rajaraja's rule, what is not apparent except for the seekers is the fact that the compilation of the Saiva Tirumurais through Nambiyandar Nambi at the instance of Rajaraja, earning Rajaraja the title of Tirumurai Kanda Cholan. Recitation through appointment of Oduvars, consecration of Vigrahas of the Nayanmars started. Around the same time, in the Vaishnava fold came Sriman Nadamunigal, first of the gurus of the Sri Vaishnava Guru Parampara, who went in search of Tiruvaimozhi of Nammalvar and through Divya Drishti got all the 4,000 verses from Nammalvar. The Prabandham is a compendium containing the verses of 12 Alvars that came to light, and the Tirumurais or the Panniru Tirumuraigal, the 12 Tirumurais containing the verses of all the 63 Nayanmars. Let us now go straight to the opening pages of Ponnian Selvan. You can see in the map some of the places and the stalas that we would be traversing through the talk today. You can see the Kanchi and Mamalapuram up in the north, the Veeranarayana Eri, Thiruvaiyar, Kaveri, Palayarai, Tanjavur, Urayur, Nagapattinam, Kodikkarai, Rameswaram, and across the seas, Tirukkediswaram, Madottam that we are going to see. The Ponnian Selvan novel actually begins with Vandiyathevan, and it opens on the banks of this huge lake called the Veeranarayana Eri that you can see in the picture here pointed out. I will take up characters, instances, and quote verses as they appear, a linear approach. Forgive me for taking it for granted that all of you either know the characters through the movie or from the novel itself. With limited time, it is difficult to introduce all the characters. The opening of the novel is significant for our topic. The movie opens slightly differently, as we all know. The novel opens, as I said, on the banks of the Veeranarayanapuram lake, a large man-made lake constructed using the peacetime forces to drain waters, excess waters of river Kaveri. Veeranarayanapuram or Kattumannar Kovil is a very important place in the Sri Vaishnava map. It was the birthplace of Sriman Nadamunigal. You can see the Kaveri, Veeranarayanapuram, and the Nammalvar. Many would get offended by the portrayal of Alvar Kadiyan. Along with Vandiyathevan would come Alvar Kadiyan in the opening scenes of the novel as a buffoon, construing it to be an offensive portrayal of a Vaishnava. Kalki wants to show the sectarian differences that existed at that time, but over-the-top buffoonery of Alvar Kadiyan seems to be an effort to hide his character, his original character, and show himself as a spy. That apart, the opening chapters show Kalki's intention to show the origins of the Nalayira Divya Prabandham, throwing light on its recovery. The opening day also is significant as it happened to be the Padinettam Perukku or the Adi Perukku, a celebration of the fresh flood that comes in River Kaveri. And in the novel, the Adi Perukku day also happened to be the Tiruvadipuram, the birthday of Andal. One of the names of Parantaka was also Veeranarayana. It was the ancestor of Rajaraja Chola, the same Parantaka who gold-plated the roof of Tillai Chidambaram temple. Parantaka's son Rajaditya excavated the Veeranam lake, and deity Vishnu being associated with waters, a temple was also constructed for Vishnu there. The syncretic nature of kings and their endowments comes across in all these. At the Veeranarayanapuram temple, Alvar Kadiyan breaks into songs, singing Andal's verses. Kalki says that he was singing Andal's verses, though the quotes that we get are from Nammalvar's Thiruvaimozhi. In this picture, you can see Swami Alavandar, grandson of Nadamunigal, and the Kattumannar Koil, the Veeramarayanapuram temple, as it exists today. And this is the verse Araiyar sings. பொலிக பொலிக போயிற்று வல்லுயிர்ச்சோம் கலியும் நகரமும் நைந்த நமக்கு இங்கு யாதொன்றும் இல்லை கலியும் கெடும் கண்டு கொள்மின் கடல் வண்ணன் பூதங்கள் மண்மேல் மலிய புகுந்திசை பாடி ஆடி ஒளிதிர கண்டோம். That is one of the Thiruvaimozhi verses. You can see the translation there. And the next verse is also from Thiruvaimozhi. கண்டோம் 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 கண்ணுக்கிணியல் கண்டோம் தொண்டீர் எல்லீரும் வாரீர் தொழுது தொழுது நின்றார்த்தும் வண்டார் தன்னந்துழாயான் மாதவன் பூதங்கள் மண்மேல் பண்தான் பாடி நின்றாடி பறந்து திரிந்தனவே. When Vandiyathevan saw Araiyar singing these verses and getting teary-eyed, Vandiyathevan thought, this guy is a Paramabhakta, even Paramabhaktan, he says. Ishwara Munigal at the temple, when he heard the last line of the verse, the Thiruvaimozhi is divided into 10 verses each. They are called Pattu, each one containing 10 stanzas. At the end comes the Falashruti kind of a verse, where it says either Tirukurugur or Sadagopan, the signature of Nammalvar, and also that it is Ivai Pattum, Ayirathil Ivai Pattum, that is the 10 out of 1,000 which he mentions. So he hears that 10 out of 1,000. And he wanted to know if Alvar could teach the entire Prabandham to his Nadamunigal. I would like to quote Kalki here. Pinnal in the Ur, Pala Permahale Ade Pohiradu. Palvadium Muhatil Tejas Purian Indra Nammalvar Pasurangale Keta Balagan, Valarnd Nadamunigal Endra Tirunamatodu, Vaishnava Acharya Paramparail, Mudal Acharya Raha Pohira. This is such a touching introduction Kalki gives us to Nathamuni and says like how he was standing there with all the Tejas as a young boy. Though there is a slight departure here from what Kalki mentions to the Guru Parampara stories. Kalki quotes these two verses from Thiruvaimozhi, whereas Guru Parampara legends tell us that it is from the Anjam Pattu Ettam Tirumozhi, the 5th decade and the 8th verse on Tirukudandai Ara Amudan, Ara Amudi Adiyen Udalam Ninpal Anbaye, which was the verse or which was the pattu that was sang by a set of devotees, pilgrims who had come from what is called Melnadu. And Nadamunigal heard it and he wanted to know if the pilgrims knew entire set of 1,000 verses. So that is the difference between what Ponnian Selvan tells us and what the Guru Parampara legends are. After the introduction to the search of Divya Prabandham, the religious cultural event that we get to see in the book is the performance of Kuravai Kuttu at the Kadambur Maligai. Even as the feudal lords are assembled to plot a regime change, Kuravai Kuttu is a dance form in praise of Murugan, his marriage to Valli. Celebration of Kaveri continues as Kalki introduces the Naika of the story, Kundavai, sailing on the tributary Arisilaru along with her friends, and the ladies are singing verses in praise of Kaveri from Silappadiharam. Marungu Vandu Sirandarpa Manipu Adai Aduporthu Karangayarkan Viditolgi Nadandai Vali Kaveri Karangayarkan Viditolgi Nadandavellam Ninkanavan Tirundu Sengol Valayamai Arindhen Vali Kaveri. Kaveri is personified here as a beautiful lady, and Madhavi's lines in the epic says she perhaps was walking daintily on as her husband is an able, honest and morally upright ruler. The reference is to Chola ruler as Kaveri's husband. Sengol Valayamai, the uprightness of the regime is what is mentioned here, the verse. The next episode of note we see is a Shaiva devotee and Alvar Kadiyan in confrontation, and each of them quoting verses in support of the greatness of Panchakshara and the Ashtakshara mantras. Katrunai Puttiyor Kadalir Paichnum Natrunayavadu Namachivayave, says the Shiva devotee. Nadine Nadi Nan Kandukonde Narayana Enum Namam quotes Alvar Kadiyan from Thirumangai Alvar. We should notice how the cultural and religious references are integral part of the story and not used as fillers or mentioned cursorily. In a crucial chapter that introduced pivot of the story, Nandini, Kalki gives an elaborate background on the religious history of Tamil country, the Bauddha Samana period and the emergence of Alvars and Nayanmars. He talks about how for 600 years, Pazhandamil நாட்டில் ஏறக்குறைய 600 வருஷ காலம் பௌத்த மதமும் சமண மதமும் செல்வாக்கு பெற்றிருந்தன. அந்த செல்வாக்கினால் தமிழகம் பல நன்மைகளை எய்தியது. He says like Tamil Nadu reaped the benefits of the 600-year rules of the influence of the Buddhism and Jainism, and says சிற்பம் சித்திரம் கவிதை காவியம் முதலை கலைகள் தழைத்தோங்கின. பின்னர் ஆழ்வார்களும் நாயன்மார்களும் தோன்றினார்கள். The emergence of the Alvars and Nayanmars after that. சமய பிரச்சாரத்துக்கு சிற்பக்கலையுடன் கூட இசைக்கலையையும் பயன்படுத்தி கொண்டார்கள். How they used music for the propagation of their faith. ஆழ்வார்களின் பாசுரங்களையும் மூவர் தேவார பண்களையும் தேவகானத்தை ஒத்த இசையில் அமைத்து பலர் பாடத் தொடங்கினார்கள். That was a time when they started singing தேவாரம் and Divya Prabandham set to music in what is Devaganam, which is differentiating it from the Manushya Ganam, that they set it to tune to Devaganam and they started singing. ஆழ்வார்களின் பாடல் பெற்ற விஷ்ணு ஸ்தலங்களும் மூவரின் பாடல் பெற்ற சிவஸ்தலங்களும் புதிய சிறப்பையும் புனித தன்மையும் அடைந்தன. He is talking about the kshetras that were sung by the Alvars and the kshetras that were sung by the Nayanmars. We know that we have 108 Divya Desams in the Sri Vaishnava list and 276 Divya Desams Padal Petra Stalangal in the Shaiva side. The wooden and the mud structures of the temple were changed to the katralis, the granite structures, and Kalki mentions all of this. And that he mentions specifically that during the time of Vijayalaya Chola, which was the 9th century, all these started, and also gives us a glimpse of the Veera Shaiva and the Veera Vaishnava clashes that existed 1,000 years ago. Narrating the story of Nandini. Now we get back to the character. We also hear the line of Moonram Tiruvandadi by Peyalvar, Tirukandeen Ponmeni Kandeen being quoted by Alvar Kadiyan. He was telling Vandiyathevan how Nandini was brought up in the Vaishnava home and they hoped one day that they would have an Andal in her. Obviously, hopes belied as she turned out to be a scheming woman, seeking revenge for the wrong she faced, plotting the elimination of Chola monarch and his anointed heir and also Arunmozhivarman. The story travels across lands along the course of river Kaveri, and we are taken next to Thiruvaiyaru, introduced to us through the eyes of and the words of Vandiyathevan. Its greatness, its beauty, the songs, dance, classical music, Bharatanatyam. Thiruvaiyaru resembled the lines of the great Shivabhakta Sambandhanar. கோலோட கோல்வளையார் கூத்தாட குவிமுலையார் முகத்து நின்று சேலோட சிலையாட சேழையார் நடமாடும் திருவையாறு. Women wearing beautiful ornaments are dancing, ladies wearing collection of bangles dance to the instructions of the instructor who holds a stick in his hand to direct them. Seloda silayada seiyar nadamadum Thiruvaiyaru. Like any common devotee who would appreciate the scene of devotees performing anushtanams, Vandiyathevan remarked too and exclaimed how பட்டை பட்டையாக அவர்கள் திருநீர் அணிந்திருப்பது எவ்வளவு கலையா இருக்கிறது. How dignified, beautiful they look wearing திருநீர் on their foreheads. இசைக்கும் கலைக்கும் இறைவன் பணித்த ஊர் இந்த திருவையாறு போலும், he says. That Thiruvaiyaru is destined to be the place for dance and music by the god. Kalki perhaps thought not only of the Chola times and the Tevara mover when he wrote that line, but perhaps also the Carnatic music trinity and Saint Tyagaraja. We'll get to Thiruvaiyaru again. For now, we move on with the story to the next character and the next Padigam. We meet Sendan Amudan next, important character, though minor at the point when Vandiyathevan meets him. Mother and son are devoted to the service of the Shiva temple, and son a singer of Devara Padigangal. Amudan introduces us to the famous Sundarar Thevaram verse on Tirumalappadi, one that would melt every devotee's heart. You can see the Tiruvayyaru temple, the Tirumalappadi temple, and the Nalvar there on the other side, the Jnana Sambandha, Tirunavukkarasar, Sundararan, Manikavachagar. I would like to play the song, if possible. Wearing the laburnum flowers on his head. He says, Anne unnayallal ini yare ninekkene. Who else shall I think of except you? Okay. You can have a look at the map, maybe later to look at the characters in the novel. I just put it up there as I go on and talk about the Sundarar Padigam in the meanwhile. Sundarar visited various shrines, and when he was at Tiruvalampuil, Shivaperuman appeared in his sleep and asked, Malapadinil Varuvadarkku Ninekka Marandayo, did you forget to visit Malapadi? And then he goes and sings at Tirumalapadi, and this is that moving verse that we got here. Look how conscious Kalki is of the Tirumurais, the times, their influence. If he wasn't conscious, we wouldn't have these introductions to various verses through multiple characters and at apt locations, situations. We talked about a minor character like Senthan Amudan. Now we will go to the ruling monarch, Chandra Chola, who was ailing, bedridden, and there was a meeting of an assembly of poets. Siriya Paluvettarayar, the chief guard of the palace, is also present in the assembly of poets. Those who know the story would know the significance of that particular scene. And Chandra Chola asked the assembly of poets, isn't there a Tamil poet who sang Namarkum Kudiyallom, Namanai Anjom, Narakattil Idarpadom, Nadalai Illom, Emapom, Piniyariyom, Panivom Allom, Inbame, Ennalum, Tumbamillai. Tamarkum Kudiyalla Tanmayana, Sankarannar Sankavan Kudayar Kadil, Komarke Namendrum Mila Alai, Koimalar Sevadi Inaye Kurihinome. That is the full verse. So he wants to ask, who is that poet? Isn't there a poet who sang that we don't worry about anybody, let anybody be the ruler. We don't even worry about the Yamadharma Raja. We are not worried about any of them. So he is asking about that particular verse. It was at Tiruvadigai Tiruvattanam that Navukkarasar sings this Padigam, daring the king who had sent summons to him after hearing of his reconversion to Saivism. That is when he says, he dares them, says, we do not bow down to any. We are scared of none, not even Yama. And this Padikam was called Marumatru Tiruthandagam as it went against the king's orders. And this is how beautifully we are introduced to the saints one after the other. Thirugnana Sambandar, Sundaramurti Nayanar, and Tirunavukkarasar. It should naturally inspire the reader to read and singer Mover Padihangal. Mover, I'll give a small introduction here. The Trinity who are important among the 63 Nayanmars whose works constitute major portion of the Panniru Tirumuraigal, the 12 Tirumurais. First 3 books are Jnana Sambandar's works. Next 3 by Tirunavukkarasar are upper, and Sundarars makes the 7th Tirumurai. Sundarar, who is supposed to have lived in the first quarter of the 8th century, first wrote an account of the Nayanmars in Tirutondar Tohai, listing 62 Nayanmars. 2 centuries later, Nambiyandar Nambi wrote Tirutondar Tiruvandadi with brief biography of Nayanmars in verses, apart from compiling the Tirumurais. He added Sundarar's name to the account, making it 63. Later, Manikkavachagar's works were also added, and that became the 8th Tirumurai, though his name is not included in the list of Nayanmars. Verses of other saints were compiled in the 9th to 11th Tirumurais. In the 12th century, Sekiyar wrote the grand epic, the great epic, Periyapuranam, which became the 12th Tirumurai. There are over 18,000 verses in the Panniru Tirumurais. Now, to get back to the conversation, we heard what Sundara Chola has asked. And he says, only someone who had a Pratyaksha darshan of God could have sung like that. Who else could sing so boldly? Pini Ariyom, we don't know any illnesses, and Sundara Chola is ill and he is bedridden at that point of time, and there are also scheming things happening around him in the kingdom, and he is discussing this particular verse. And we know that the story of Appar Swami, how he was cured of his incurable stomach pain, and that is when he comes back and reposes his faith in Shiva, and he reconverts to Saivism from Jainism. And the king who had summoned him to be Jaina king. And Sundara Chola says, poets, stop singing about me, my grands. Sing these blessed verses. Apparum Sambandarum Sundaramurtiyum இதுபோல் ஆயிரக்கணக்கான பக்திமயமான தீந்தமிழ் பாடல்களை பாடியிருக்கிறார்கள். அப்பாடல்கள் எல்லாவற்றையும் ஒருங்கு சேர்த்தால் எவ்வளவு நன்றாய் இருக்கும். படித்தும் பாடியும் பரவசம் அடைவதற்கு ஒரு ஆயுட்காலம் போதாதல்லவா? Don't sing about me, sing these verses. Even one lifetime would not be enough to do that. And the seeds, the desire for compilation of the Tirumurais get echoed in that conversation of Chola. Now we go to one more city. The city was once a capital of the Cholas, Padayarai. On the southern banks of Arisla, we get introduced to also, and this is where we get to see Padayarai. The city encompassed Nandipura Vinnakaram, Tiruchattimutram, Pattiswaram, Arichandrapuram temples. There are 4 Shiva temples which are mentioned, which were on the 4 sides of Padayarai, the Merku Katrali, Vadakku Katrali, and all of them. And Sekiyar had sung about the glory of Padayarai 200 years later. That is from the time period that we are discussing in this novel. And the lines that are quoted in the novel are Therin Meviya Selumani Vidigal Sirandu Paril Neediya Permaiser Padi Padayarai. The Padayarai streets were chariots rain, and what a great and famous city that it was. Most of the temples from that era have survived. We have the Pattiswaram temple, Nathan Kovil, Tiruchattimuttam, all continuing in worship today, though some of the temples have been in ruins from that long list of temples around Padayarai. As I said, it was a Chola capital before they moved to Tanjavur, and so the grandeur and the number of temples are to be expected. In the novel, we see how Kundavai continues to live in Padayarai, and we also meet Sembiyan Madevi at Padayarai. And the hero also enters, Vandiyathevan. I call him hero because he's the one who begins the story and he is the one who takes us through the entire story. So I called him a hero. Vandiyathevan entered Padayarai on a Sri Jayanti. He saw people dressed as Krishna and Gopas, an enactment of the Govardhana episode. Exuberance and celebration, the Uriyadi is happening and people are splashing turmeric water on each other and they are celebrating. And which is the place that he is talking about? As I said, that one of the temples I mentioned just now, Nadan Kovil, which is called Nandipura Vinnakaram in the novel. நந்திபுர விண்ணகரத்து பெருமாள் கோவிலை சுற்றி இந்த திருவிழா கொண்டாட்டங்கள் அதிகமாக நடைபெறுகின்றன. இது என்ன? What is happening today? And Kalki mentioned to said Sri Jayanti. Sri Jayanti is the Krishna Janmashtami. This is Sembian Madi. Okay. We hear first the chants of Alvarkadiyan, the verse that we heard earlier, Kanden, 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 Kannikinina Kanden. It is repeated here, maybe since it happened to be Sri Jayanti and the verses are in praise of Sri Krishna. Repeating the lines was also perhaps an alert by Alvarkadiyan to Vandiyathevan, since he carried the verses quoted. சிவனையும் துர்க்கையும் குலதெய்வமாக கொண்டு வழிபடுகிறவர்கள். ஆனால் திருமாலிடமும் மற்ற சமயங்களிடமும் இவர்களுக்கு துவேஷம் என்பது கிடையாது. இன்று கண்ணன் பிறந்த நாள் என்பதை முன்னிட்டு பெருமாள் கோவிலுக்கு வந்தார்கள் போலும். This is what Vandiyathevan says. Though the king and the family is devoted to Shiva and they worship at the Shiva and the Durga temples, today they are all assembled at Vishnu temple, perhaps because of Sri Jayanti. I'm going to read out a longer passage from the book as it is, bear with me, since it introduces Sembian Mahadevi, the most famous and the devout of the Chola queens. How she was seated, he explains. Ponnal Seida Navarathinangal Iletha Simhasanathil, what kind of Simhasana she was seated. And she was wearing a Vent Pattadai Uduthi, Vibhudiyam Rudrashara Maliyam Tarithu, where Endavida Abaranangalum Punamal, அளவற்ற செல்வங்களுக்கு இடையில் அஷ்ட ஐஸ்வர்யங்களுக்கு மத்தியில் வைராகிய சீலையாக வாழ முடியும் என்பதை நிரூபித்துக் கொண்டிருந்தார். Shows like how Dridhavrata she was in her Shiva Bhakti. Though she was living amidst so much of riches, she was not touched by all of them. பிரகாசமான முகமும் அரச குலத்தில் பிறந்து அரச குலத்தில் புகுந்த அரசர்க்கரசி என்பதை புலப்படுத்தின. சோழ அரச குடும்பத்தை சேர்ந்தவர்கள் அத்தனை பேரும் விதிவிலக்கின்றி இந்த பெருமூதாட்டியை தெய்வமாக மதித்து பாராட்டி கொண்டாடி அவருடைய விருப்பத்துக்கு மாறாக எதுவும் சொல்லாமல் நடந்து வந்ததில் யாதொரு வியப்புமில்லை. Nobody in the Chola family ever disputed or went against her words. And next comes the important para. செம்பியன் மாதேவியின் அரண்மனை முற்றத்திலும் சபா மண்டபத்திலும் சிற்பிகளின் கூட்டமும் தேவார பாடகர்களின் கோஷ்டியும் ஜே என்று எப்போதும் கூடியிருப்பது வழக்கம். தூர தூர தேசங்களிலிருந்து சிவனடியார்களும் தமிழ் புலவர்களும் அடிக்கடி வந்து பரிசுகள் பெற்று போவது வழக்கம். சிவபூஜை பிரசாதம் கொண்டு வரும் அர்ச்சகர்களின் கூட்டம் அதிகமாகவே இருக்கும். Like how her sabha was always filled with people, shilpis and those who come to sing the devara padiyangal and archakas who bring up the prasadams from various temples. That day in her court, devotees asked her for Karangal Tirupani, that is a granite structure, creating stronger structural temples at Tirumudugundram, which is Vriddhachalam, Tirukurangadurai and Tirumalappadi. Kalki says the Sivanadiyas also had brought with them prototypes and illustrations on how to renovate them. Sembian Mahadevi asked them, which Malappadi? Recall that song that we got introduced earlier through Sendan Amudan. Sundaramurthy Swamiகளை குரல் கொடுத்து அழைத்து பாடல் பெற்றாரே, அந்த பெருமான் வீற்றிருக்கும் மழபாடிதான். So he says, like, recalls that Sundaramurthy's story as to how he was called by Shiva himself to come and sing that same Malapadi, he says. And we get to hear the Ponnarni in this. And the person who had come from there says, Mother, the temple is still the same small temple hidden behind the Kondrai trees, the Indian laburnum, the yellow colored Kondrai flowers which Shivavarman wears. We want the renovation to start as soon as possible. And Sembian Mahadevi gave a nod. There have been multiple inscriptions left by the Chola rulers which attest to the fact of their construction and various other endowments that give credence to the dialogues and instances Kalki brings about in Ponnian Selvan. Let us see a recent article, to quote from the Hindu, on Sembian Mahadevi to relate to the introduction given by Kalki. To quote, she left an unmistakable stamp in temple she renovated or built. Until then, niche figures in the exterior walls had not exceeded 2 or 3 at the most, but she installed several more. In Karandai, for example, she had 16 niche figures sculpted. Sculptures commissioned by her were marked by simplicity in attire and ornamentation. So the stylish features also get associated with Sembian Mahadevi's name, and she belonged to the Madavar family from there, and so she must have made contributions to the temple definitely. And there is only one inscription though left from that temple which attests to that fact. She also excavated lakes, created Sembian Mahadevi Chaturvedi Mangalam, which is near Nagapattinam. The Sembian Mahadevi bronze that has been at the center of debates which returned to India some years ago, that was originally installed at the Kailasanatha temple by Rajendra Chola. One of the finest Chola bronzes that you can see is that of that Sembian Mahadevi sculpture. If you Google that, you will get, if you Google Sembian Mahadevi bronze, you will get that. Since the scene continued to be Padayarai and the backdrop Krishna Janana, we hear more verses from Alvar Kadiyan. He told Kundavai of his visit to Srivilliputtur, the birthplace of Periyalvar and Andal, and how he learnt a few verses of Vishnu Chitta Periyalvar during his stay there. Verses that celebrate the birth of Sri Krishna. I think I need to. Okay. This is the verse. Sorry that I went to that verse much earlier. Vannam Madangal Soot Tirukottiur, Kannan Kesavan Nambi Pirandinil, Ennai Sunnam Edirether Tuvida, Kannan Mutram Kalandar Aitre, Oduvar, Vilvar, Uhandalipar, Naduvan, Nambiran, Enkutran Enbar, Paduvargalum, Palpare Kottan Endru, Aduvargalum, Aitre, Aipadi. He is thinking of the Aipadi scene, Tiruvaipadi, when Krishna took his birth and reached there, but he is singing it in the shrine of Tirukkoshtiyu. He says, Vanna Madangal Su Tirukkoshtiyu, and he is singing about the Krishna Janana, which is the verse quoted here. And Periyalvar is seeing Tiruvaipadi in Tirukkoshtiyu that day, and Alvar Kadiyan says, today Padayarai resembles Tiruvaipadi. And then we hear about the dance and music that is happening inside the palace. And that music we talk about comes from the Tamil epic Silappadigaram. If you are fine, I would like to play that music for a few minutes, because that verse from Silappadigaram has been made famous by M.S. Subbulakshmi. She had sung that in her records, and that mentions about Vishnu and also Krishna there. What are these? What is this thing? If we can't sing that Kariyavan, Krishna, and what are we if we are not going to singing Narayana and Nave and Nave? And those of you who have seen the movie, you would remember the dance scene that happens outside the fort. But it is easy to miss the nuances of as to why we see Kamsa dancing there. But Kalki doesn't leave us with any doubt. Once these lines were heard, Vandiyathevan comments in the book, Kanjanar mikka vanjanarayirukkalam, ஆனால் எனக்கு நேற்று பேருதவி செய்தார். Kamsa might be a deceiver, but he helped me in a big way last night, explaining how from the drama troupe he took the Kamsa mask to enter the fort, since there was an alert about him as an absconding guy. That is the line he picks up. Madandala Nenjittu Kanjanar Vanjam Kadandani Nutrual Par Natrasiyam Potra. And it talks about Krishna, how he went as a Durga for Pandavas and all that. And this is one of the earliest we can get the scenes from Krishna Jananam and Mahabharata from the Tamil epic. It's going to be difficult not to repeat adjectives. See how beautifully Kalki
Vaijayanthi, I just want to interrupt. You become very soft. Can you speak a little louder?
Sure. Okay. Fine.
Okay.
Yeah. It's going to be difficult not to repeat adjectives. See how beautifully Kalki introduces places one after other. The temples there, the Padikams, the Prabandhams connected with the temples. Mamallapuram, a port city that Kalki brought alive for us in his Sivagami in Sabadam. We get a glimpse of it in Ponnian Selvan. This is the temple that you can see in the caves behind from one of the old paintings there. The cave temples, a structural temple on the shore, and finally the Vinnagara temple, the Stalasaina Perumal temple in the center of the town. This is the Stalasaina Perumal temple that you can see. Vinnagaram is a shorter version of Vishnu Graham. Just a second. Can we mute me? Sorry, there was a disturbance, so I had to stop. Saivathiyum, Vaishnavatiyum, iru kangalai pola enni potri valatha Parameswara Pallavan Tiruppani seida Vinnagaram idu. Thirumangai Alvar in the கோயிலுக்கு வந்து தலசாயன பெருமாளை தரிசித்து பக்தி வெள்ளம் பெருக்கெடுத்து ஓடும் தமிழ் பாடல்களை பாடியிருக்கிறார். It gets introduced as Thirumangai Alvar had come and sung this place, and this also has been a place which has been endowed by the Pallava kings. It has been tough to assign dates for Alvars, and since Thirumangai Alvar and the Pallava connection is made, like to quote like how because of the verses at the Mahabalipuram, that is the Stalasaina Perumal temple, and also Thirumangai Alvar's other verses from the Parameshwara Vinnagaram Vaikunta Perumal temple in Kanchipuram, the date gets assigned to him, and he is considered to be the contemporary of King Nandivarma Pallavan II, 8th century. Let's see the verse here. Yeah, this is the shore temple, and you can see the verse. Kalangal iyangum mallai kadal mallai talasainam valangul manathar avarai valangul en madanenje. He's talking about heavy boats carrying heaps of gold and how thriving port city that Mamallapuram was. We'll travel now from Kadalmallai to Kodikkarai. Two different corners, and from the grandeur of the Pallava temples to the quiet and lonely shrine of Kodikkarai Kulagar. Kodi literally means a far corner, and Kulagar in Tamil can mean young, beautiful. It is at this crucial juncture, when everyone is waiting to meet one of Kalki's unique female characters, Pungurli, that one gets introduced to Kodikkarai and Kulagar. Pungurli is obviously living there. Kodikkarai would play an important role in the novel, as it did as a port for Cholas in their wars and transit to Sri Lanka. Sundarar was moved by the sight of the temple and asked, when there are temples visited by devotees continuously, why did you choose to come and settle here in this lonely forest? Kadidai kadarkaatru vandu etra kareimel kudidan ayale irundar kutramamo kodien kandal kandana kodik kulagir adigel umakkar tunayar irundire. Why are you staying there alone? With whose companionship are you there? He says, when there are temples visited continuously by devotees, why are you coming and sitting here alone? This is, you can see like a portrayal of Kodikkarai. There's nothing there around Kodikkarai, and on the other shores you can see Velvettithurai being mentioned there, Sri Lanka, and that is a kind of place where Kodikkarai is situated. Mattam Malisul Marakkadadan Tenbal Pattar Palar Pada Irunda Parama Kotta Polil Sool Yettal Taniye Irunda Empirane. What is the reason for you to be remaining here alone? What a moving question by Bhakta. Kodikkarai Kulagar temple was set amidst a forest, and Kalki has left a footnote in Ponnian Selvan saying that even after 1,000 years, the deity there resides alone, saying that it is almost in the same condition as it was during the Chola times. To quote, it was Kalki who shed light on the temple and secured it a permanent place in history through his writings. The temple possesses no inscriptions of significance. It cannot boast of any great architecture. That is what a historian has quoted saying in a recent article in the Hindu. And so I just wanted to quote it to show like how Kalki was so much tuned into the temples and the landscape when he was singing and bringing them about in the book. Pungurli is hailed for her free spirit, being an independent woman, rebellious in the story, but at heart she is a Bhakta. There is a moment in the story when she is introduced, she thinks maybe she should go to the Kulagar temple and ask the bhatta to sing a Devaram. From Pungurli, a humble citizen, now we take a look at Aniruddha Brahmarayar, the trusted minister of Sundara Chola. Historicity of Aniruddha Brahmarayar is ascertained through the Anbil copper plates. Anbil is a place where they hailed from, a Vaishnava family that was in service of Srirangam temple. The Anbil copper plates record a grant of Pattuveli Nilam, that is 10 portions of land to Aniruddha Brahmarayar by Sundara Chola in the 4th year of his rule or coronation. He was praised for his wise counsel, and it comes through in his conversation with Alvar Kadiyan, who's as usual provocative with his Vaishnava versus Saiva arguments. He questions the minister as to why he wasn't sporting an Urdhva Pundara, that is a Thiruman, and why did he go to worship at Rameshwaram temple. லிங்கத்திட்ட புராணத்தின் சமணரும் சாக்கியரும் அழிந்து வாதீர்களும் மற்றும் தெய்வமாகின்றார் அழிந்து சென்னல் கவரி வீசும் திருக்குறுகூர் அருள் பொலிந்து நின்ற பிரான் கண்டீர் ஒன்றும் பொய்யில்லை போற்றுமினே. And Anbil Brahmarayar, he quotes this verse from Thiruvaimozhi to say like everyone, all of you who are asking various things, saying various things, look at it. All of them are there in Polindra Piran, that is in Vishnu. When Sadakopan himself has said this, is it wrong for me to see Narayana in a Shivalinga? Asks Brahmarayar. Nirai, Nilanai, Tiyai, Kalai, Neduvanai, Sirar, Sudarkal, Irandai, Sivanai, Ayanai, Kurar, Adi, Vensangri, Endi, Kodiyen Pal, Varai, Urunal, Mannum, Vinnum, Magirave. This is also from Tiruvaimozhi. He says, like, you are all this, but he says, I want to see you come appear before me as Vishnu holding conch and chakra. Again, he quotes from Tiruvaimozhi and tells Arvarkadiyan to cleanse his heart. The verse is, Muniye Nanmuhane Mukkannappa en Polla Kanivai Tamarai Kan Karumanikkame en Kalva Taniye Aruvire en Talaimisayai Vandittu ini naan Pogalotten Ondrum Mayam Seyyel Ennaye. Sadagopan calls him Mukkannappa, the one with Trinetra, and you object my going to Shiva temple, asks Aniruddha Brahmaraya. The Vaishnava commentaries, interpretations may differ, but Kalki takes the meaning as it is, taking a neutral stance, looking for harmony among Sampradayas. It does have the intended effect in the story, as Arvarkadiyan has a change of heart and apologizes. He says, sorry, the mistakes happened because I have not read all of Nammalvar's works. I wasted time in unnecessary quarrels. Grant me a boon. I wish to go to Tirukkurugur and stay there permanently. I want to learn all the 1,000 songs of our Sadagopan and then go from town to town singing them. Aniruddha Brahmarayar asks, how did you get this idea, Arvarkadiyan? And we get a recap of the initial episode of him singing at Veeranarayanapuram temple and all that. He says, I wanted to dedicate my small self to the cause even then. Today it has become a resolve. Brahmarayar's reply is also interesting. He says, follow your Swadharma as Gitacharya has commanded Tirumalai. Mahans would be born in this land to collect and spread the Alvar Pasurams. Similarly, there would be saintly avatars who would establish the essence of Vedic philosophy in the verses, write about them in Sanskrit and spread it across the country. This is, I'm quoting the translation from Kalki's Ponnian Selvan itself. Perhaps there is a hint here at Swami Ramanuja's avatara. And Brahmarayar says, you and I are born to serve the country. You can't forget that we have dedicated ourselves to the service of the Choya Chakravarti. Aniruddha Brahmarayar then gives a small detail from across the shores from Rameshwaram, that is about Madhottam, because in the novel he had just returned from Madhottam when this conversation happens. And he says the place is the same as the one sung by Samandar and Sundarar. We saw in that map Tirukkedishwaram and Tirukonamalai that we see from across the shores in Sri Lanka there. Yeah. He's quoting the Jnanasambandhar's Tirukkedishwara Padiham here. Vandu Panseyu Mamalar Podin Manjai Nadamidu Madhottam Tondar Nadurum Tudisaya Arulsai Kedishwaram Adidane, about the greatness of the Kedishwaram. And it is Kedishwaram where Shivan bestows his grace to his devotees when they praise him daily. This is the introduction we get to the Tirukkedishwaram in this Padikam. And then now we move to Arunmozhivarman. We get introduced to him while he is in Sri Lanka. And here Kalki gives us a glimpse of Anuradhapura. On the right, you will see Kalki along with friends at the Ajanta caves. And you see the Anuradhapura stupa, one of the largest stupas that is there. And below that is the caves of Sigiriya. Why I wanted to share Kalki's photograph here, as we know Kalki was his pen name. His original name was Krishnamurti. He was the founder editor of the Kalki magazine, which runs even today, who has written many historical novels like Parthiban Kanavu, Sivagami and Sabadam, and then Ponnian Selvan. It was serialized in his magazine Kalki. And we get to know from sources and his own writings that Kalki had visited places that were related to his novels, like going to Ajanta caves when he was writing about Ajanta and the Sivakami in Sabadam. And then all these places. If we see Tanjavur and Padayarai in detail in Ponnian Selvan, Kalki would take us from the base of Mamallapuram to Badami in Sivagami in Sabadam. The quest to learn paintings of Ajanta becomes an interesting thread in Sivagami in Sabadam. Maybe at this point, I can also clarify when people ask whether we are talking about the fiction as in the novel, historical novel, or history. See, most of the places that are mentioned in the book, especially the stalams, all the stalams are there, they are real, they are there. And the verses he quotes, they are the real verses from Tirumurais and Deva Divya Prabandhams that he is quoting. And most of the kings and queens are the same as we see in the fiction. And even by their nature, they are like what he had mentioned, that we get to know through several inscriptions that we've got from the temples and also the copper plates. So that's why I wanted to mention, yes, there is a fictional element, and historians have written about very diverges from the original history in his fiction, and we have to read them as fiction or fictional account. And even in this, there might be some digressions in the way he represents Tirumurais or the Divya Prabandham and the reality. But the stalams are real, the padigams are real, and the prabandhams are real. That is what I would like to clarify at this point. Through Arulmozhi Varman, we get to see Anuradhapura and see how Arulmozhi Varman is introduced. Kalki's novels are also veritable travelogues. He takes us on a journey to all these places. And that is why probably he made Rajaraja Chola a tourist guide when he introduces us in the novel. Rajaraja Chola, or Arulmozhi Varman as he is introduced to us, is seen returning from to Sigiriya. Sigiriya is the cave, and he had taken Chinese tourists there as a mahout. He doesn't reveal himself as a king there, and he has gone as a mahout. And that is how we get introduced to Dambula, Sigiriya, and Anuradhapura and all of that. And he also introduces Arulmozhi Varman as a equitable king who looked at all the sampradayas and religious with equal mind, and he did not discriminate between them. And there's like large description about like how he had promised, and he was in the process of renovating the damaged stupas and temples in Sri Lanka. Those of you who have seen the movie would well know how things take a dramatic turn once a scene shifts to Sri Lanka. Things get pretty tense when Arulmozhi Varman encounters a shipwreck. Poonguzhi's character comes to fore in those episodes. Amidst all this drama, Kalki continues to bring us padigams and songs. Senthan Amudan gets back into the scene singing Sundarar's Pitta Pireshudi. His affection for padigams are well known and well established already. And we also know like how even when he was in jail, he was singing Ponnar Meniyane. This Ponnar Meniyane, it's repeated several times in the work. And it reminded me of like how in Sivagami in Sabadam, he will use Munnam Avanudiya Namam Ketal, Murti Avanirukkum Mannam Ketal song. Sivagami would be singing that verse. And every time she tries to sing and dance to it, she would swoon. That is like the impact of that Bhakti. I would like to say here, it's not as a criticism, but as an observation. While it is the prerogative of the director as to how he would deal with the text in adaptation, we couldn't help think of how that particular padigam was picturized with Kumari Kamala's dance in the movie Parthiban Kanavu. In PS1, what was the use of even one padigam or a classical score or dance? Perhaps that is a creative liberty which the director had taken. But as devotee and as bhaktas, like we did notice, like how did these go missing? What we read in the book, we couldn't relate to it because it's not there in the movie. That's a small observation. If just to share like what one felt, I would like to show that song for a minute. Sorry for the digression. Now we get back to the main topic. We are getting back to Pongoli. She had started singing Sundara Tevara Padiyam, which is in the form of a messenger song in the feminine voice. Parakkum en Tillaigal, Padum em Puvaigal, Adigal Arurarai, Marakillamayum, Valegal Lillamayum, Urakam Illamayum, Unarka Valirgale. Please go and tell how this woman is now feeling. She has lost weight, her bangles is not staying in place, she is not able to sleep. And that is the verse that is quoted here. Then Sendan Amudan takes us back to Kodikkarai Kuzhagar. Kadida Katru Vandu Etra Karaimel. So that we heard earlier. Here I have quoted. Kadel Mihavalidu Karige Anja Kudi Pundil Andegal Kugai Kudaral Vedi Tundar Salavum Tia Sarakar Kodi Kudaha Idam Koil Kondaye. What kind of a place like have you come and stayed? Like all illegal elements are there. And there's a place which is like where the owls, he is using two different owls, Andai, Kugai, two varieties he is talking about. They're all there. All illegal elements are there. And is this a place that you have come and staying? Is this a place for your temple? So this is again a Kodikkarai Kuzhagar temple, as we said. Now we move to Nagai, Nagapattinam, a very important port city that thrived during the Chola regime, from where later Rajendra Chola would launch his naval expedition to Southeast Asia, earning him the title of Kadaram Kondan. Nagapattinam was famed for its temples, gardens, water bodies, mansions, and the famous Bauddha Vigara, the remains of which were still there till 19th century. Even today, the Padal Petrastalam, Tirunagai Karonam is there, and there is also the Divyadesam, Nagai Soundararaja Perumal Kovil. Kanbiniya Manimada Nirenda Neduvidi Kadal Nagai Karonam Mevi Irundire. Those are the two lines that are quoted in the book. I have quoted the this naval expedition, that is the Buddha bronze that was found at Nagapattinam along with many other Buddha bronzes. Okay, this is the Nagai Karonam. Sundarar says, you stayed on the shore city of Karonam, lined with streets full of mansions, and befitting the stature of the city, perhaps, Sundarar asked Shiva Peruman for a horse to carry all the golden ornaments which he had already requested for. This is Nambitamum Annal Poi Nagai Karonam Padi Ampun Manipun Navamanigal Ade Sandam Adal Parima, the horse. Paimbon Surigai Mudalana Petru Matrum Palapadil Tampirane Panindi Eti Tiruvaruril Sarndi Irundar. Sembian Madevi had, we had talked about her earlier. We also saw the picture of her bronze. Sembian Madevi had brought up her son Madhurantaka, the surprise contender to the throne in the novel. He is introduced in great detail by Kalki. He was brought up as a Shiva Bhakta dedicated to the cause. Parents Kandaraditya and Sembian Madevi wanted him only to pursue the path of devotion and relinquish his status as a crown prince and a future king. Kandaraditya had written verses in memory of his father, Parantaka's act of great significance, the gold plating of the Chidambara Vimana, as we talked about earlier. That particular verse or the verses have come down to us under the Tiruvasaipa section in the 9th Tirumurai. Vengol Vendan Tennan Nadum Ilamum Konda Tiral Sengor Solan Kodi Vendan Sembian Ponnaninda Angol Valayar Padiadum Anithillai Ambalatul Engon Eason Emiraya Endrukul Eiduvado. சீரால் மல்கி தன்னை காரார் சோலை கொழிவேந்தன் தஞ்சையர்கோன் கலந்த ஆரா இன்சொற் கண்டராதித்தன் அருந்தமிழ் மாலை வல்லார் பேரா உலகில் பெருமையோடும் பேரின்பம் எய்துவரே. Now comes the climax as far as our study goes. Bhakti in Ponnian Selvan, when Kalki introduces Tirunarayur Nambi in a chapter dedicated to his name. You can see here in this picture, which is an illustration from the Ponnian Selvan book. Tirunarayur Nambi, Nambiyanda Nambi as he is called, he is seated in the middle, and Sembiyan Mahadevi is seated there, and Madurantakar is also there. Madurantakan entered Padayarai to a lukewarm reception. We are back to Padayarai, where Sembiyan Mahadevi is there, where Madurantakan goes to meet him. When Madurantakan goes to meet Sembiyan Mahadevi to sort of pressurize her to accept his condition that he wanted to become a contender to the throne. So that is when he is reaching Padayarai, he sees that there has been a grand celebration, reception accorded to Nambiyanda Nambi, and he is already there in the palace. And Sembiyan Mahadevi introduced Nambiyanda Nambi to Madurantakan. He says, Kumara, in the Ilam Nambi Urai சேர்ந்தவர் அவ்வூரில் உள்ள பொல்லா பிள்ளையாரின் பூரண அருளை பெற்றவர். He is blessed by the பிள்ளையார், பொல்லா பிள்ளையார் in his town. இதுவரையில் யாருக்கும் கிடைக்காத தேவார பதிகங்கள் சில இவருக்கு கிடைத்திருக்கின்றன. He is in possession of தேவார பதிகங்கள் which was not available to anyone before. முன்னொரு காலத்தில் நமது சோழ குலத்தில் உதித்த மங்கையர்க்கரசியர் பாண்டிமா நாட்டின் மகாராணியாக விளங்கினார். அவருடைய அழைப்புக்கிணங்கி ஆளுடை பிள்ளையார் ஞானசம்பந்தர் மதுரை மாநகருக்கு சென்றார். அங்கே போரில் வென்றார். அச்சமயம் மதுரை மாநகரில் சம்பந்த சுவாமி பாடிய பதிகங்கள் சில இவருக்கு கிடைத்திருக்கின்றன. அந்த பதிகங்களில் நமது சோழ குலத்து மாதரசியை பற்றியும் சம்பந்தர் பாடியிருக்கிறார். அந்த பாடல்களை கேட்கும் போது எனக்கு உடல் பூரித்து பரவசமாகிறது. உன் தந்தை இருந்து கேட்டிருந்தால் எவ்வளவோ மகிழ்ச்சி அடைந்திருப்பார். நீயாவது கேள். She is recalling the story of how Gnanasambandar went to Madurai when Mangayarkarasi was the queen name. Mangayarkarasi hailed from the Chola dynasty but was a Pandyan queen. And Gnanasambandar goes there, debates with the Samanas, the Jainas, to establish Saivism, and that is what she is quoting. She says Gnanasambandar verses have also quoted Mangayarkarasi, and if your father had heard these verses, he would have been very happy. He is not here, so at least you listen to them, she says. This shows how closely connected the rulers were to religious activities and literary developments. Madurantakan also heard the verses, though not in the right frame of mind for that. The quoted verses here, the translation is here. Mangayarkarasi Valavarkon Pavai Varivalai Kaimadavani Pangayach Selvi Pandimadevi Paniseidu Nadoru Parava Pongaluruvan Budanayagan Nalvedamum Purulgalum Aruli Angayar Kanni Tannodu Angayar Kanni Tannodum Amarnda Alavai Avadu Idume. Alavai, the Madurai temple that he is singing about. Okay, other verse that is quoted. Nela Nikida Mandanai Mandu Manimudi Choyantan Mahalam Paniner Murial Pandima Devi Panginar Paniseidu Parava Vindular River Kirudu Velum Alaparida Mahinindra Anala Arumiyor Inburu Indra Alavai Avadu Iduve. That is also the Madurai Tirpadigam that he is singing. It is recalling the meeting of Sambandar with Mangayarkarasi. Sembiyan Mahadevi also says Mangayarkarasi had a look at the small child that Sambandar was and thought, Ayyo, where is this small child and where are those Brahmarakshasa like Samanas? How can this child debate and win over them? And there is a verse that talks about the reply he gave. Maniner Vidi Madarai Vadikku Maperun Devi Kel Panalvayoru Palaning given என்று நீ பரிவைதிட்டேல் ஆனமலை ஆதியாய் இடங்களில் பல அல்லல் சேர் ஈனர்கட் கெளியேன் அல்லேன் திரு ஆலவாயர் அவன் நிற்கவே. He says, don't worry about me, I had faced all this. And he says, like, I have full faith in Alavai, the Shiva at Madurai, and this is the reply Samandar gave. Okay, now again we'll go back to one of the scenes that we'll compare in the movie to the if you can excuse me for that. So the introduction to Nambiyanda Nambi happened, and Madhurantaka was waiting to go and tell his mother what he wanted to say. He goes and tells her, like, I want to stake claim to be the crown prince and all that. And she says, no, you are not born for that. You should not do that. And in the movie, we get the scene like where he gets very angry, mad, which is all the same as in the novel. And see the scene where Mathurandaka tears away the Rudraksham mala from his neck, and the Rudraksha falls all across. I know the sensibilities of the writer would be different from the sensibilities of the director, but Kalki probably was very conscious of what was happening, the confrontation. He gets angry, but see the sensibilities of Kalki here as a writer and perhaps as a devotee. Mathurandhakan தன் கழுத்தில் இருந்த ருத்ராட்ச மாலையை அவசரமாக கழற்ற முயன்றான். He tried to remove it. கழற்ற முடியாமல் அதை அறுக்க முயன்றான். He tried to tear it because he could not remove it. ஆனால் கழுத்து நெறிந்ததை தவிர மாலை அப்படியே இருந்தது. He says only his neck got hurt, but the mala remained as it is. Okay, from here we go back to the journey. We get a glimpse of the Gedilam river, Tirumunepadi, and the Tiruvadigai Veerattanam. They are all mentioned there, and the temple is shown. Aditya Chola's grandfather shows the Shikara of the Tirunavalur temple and says this was Nambiyarur or Sundaramurthi's birthplace. A very short introduction we get there. After that introduction to Tirukkovalur, the courts and the temples take a back seat as the story proceeds towards a complicated jigsaw. Readers get a broad view of the Nagai Chudamani Vihara, and through Arulmozhi Varman, Kalki introduces the Mahavamsa, an important Buddhist text, also essential history of Sri Lanka. We also understand the tension that existed between the Sanatana followers and the Buddhists, and the king's protection and patronage safeguarding the viharas and the Buddha bhikshus. Arulmozhi, who escaped the shipwreck under the care of bhikshus at the Nagai Vihara, is advised by the chief bhikshu to help others alleviate their troubles to find peace as advised by Buddha. Arulmozhi, composed as he always is and very, balanced in his approach, he compares what the bhikshu told him to his own religious tenets, the Saiva and Vaishnava texts, and says, see, even we have the concept Paropakaram idam sariram, and at the same time we are also told by our ancestor on the duty of bhakti and devotion to God, and about the various forms of God, Rudra, etc. Personally, I feel it is pretentious of anyone who wants to deny the importance of religiosity in Ponnian Selvan, because Kalki uses religious dialogues, verses, and subtle comments on the differences that existed among the followers of different sects, religions, debates of the times, but without offending any. From Chudamani Vihara, Arulmozhi left for Tanjavur, and the story does take one to Tiruvarur, which falls on the route to Tanjavur. How beautifully Kalki compares the concept of giving up, Tyaga, renunciation of Buddha, of Tiruvarur deity. He is called Tyagesa. It has become a point in the academic circles, at least, to attribute the concept of aparigraha to Jainism and Buddhism alone. In a very small but a para with a great clarity, Kalki establishes how Shiva was a renouncer, sacrificer, as in Tyagesa. And how did he get the name of Tyagesa? Kalki explains the Shiva's form as a Bhikshadana, how though he is the lord of the universe, he goes with a begging bowl as a Bhikshadana, And also the Thiruvilayadal, you will see Tyagesa Murthy here in this picture on one side, and the other is the Somasundara from Madurai enacting the Pittukku Mansumandar. He was a small worker and he gets beaten up and he does all this work, it shows the character of Shiva, how he goes for his devotees in various forms. And he is not somebody who's doing all this. He's a Tyagi. He also is giving up. He is also a renouncer. That is what gets established. And see how the dialogue happens. There is no fight here that happens. He says, if there is a concept of aparigraha, Tyaga and Buddhism, Arulmozhi Varman gives a counter and Kalki comes up with these explanations of Tyagesa when they cross Tiruvarur to tell the concept of Shiva as a Tyagi. And there are also these episodes about Manunidhi Cholan, which is talked about. And a related statement we'll go to from here. I can't say much about it because I'll be giving away the story. I would only say that Sembiyan Mahadevi, now we go to the next episode. Sembiyan Mahadevi goes to consult Nambiyandar Nambi on a crucial development, something of significance to the state. It is sufficient to say that it indicates the importance of a religious person, a guru, acting as a wise counsel to the queen. She also delivers a dialogue to Alvar Kadiyan. We thought Alvar Kadiyan had reformed, but he still has a probably that old tinge of him in the Saiva versus Vaishnava. So he picks up some debate in the Mata with Shiva devotee. And at that point, the Kulasekara Alvar Pasuram is quoted, which is also related to giving up. Kulasekara Alvar was a Chera king by birth. He gave up everything and he went to Srirangam in search, and he wanted to be in Srirangam. And in this verse on Tiruvengam hills, he is talking about, let's see what he talks about. Anada Selvathu Arambayargal Tarsula Vanalum Selvamum Mannarasum Yan Vendeen Tenar Punjole Tiruvengada Chunayil Meenai Pirakkum Vidiyudayen Avene. He says, I don't want anything. I don't want any kingdom and all that. I want to be born as a small little fish in the tank at Tirumalai. The Tyaga concept, this is also related to the story. As I said, I don't want to give a spoiler, so I will not talk about it. Then we get back to, go back to Sembiyan Mahadevi and Alvar Kadiyan. And what Sembiyan Mahadevi tells Alvar Kadiyan here is noteworthy. Appane Devangalukulle uyarvu thaazhvu solli vedikkayaga kuda vivadam seyyakudadu. Not even as a joke should we be talking about one god is higher and the other god is lower. Adanal sadharana janangalin ullam kulappattukku ullagum. Ordinary people would get confused if we do such talks. In Mamanaragiya Parandaga Devan, Tillai Chitrambalattukku Porkure Vendar, Ammadriye Veeranarayana Purathilulla Anantheeswarar Koilukkum Tiruppani Seidu Manyam Alittar. அவர் காட்டிய வழியிலேயே நாம் அனைவரும் கடக்க வேண்டும். He says, look at the example of my father-in-law. He did the gold plating of the Chidambaram temple. He also did contributions to the Veeranarayana temple, the Anantheeswara temple at Veeranarayana. We should follow his path. Ideally, we would have liked to end here, but as Kalki extends his story, we also extend this a little more, for we cannot miss Tiruvayar. We are in the month of Margazhi and celebrated Arudra only last week. Kundavai's visit to Araiyar for Margazhi Tiruvadirai, we get some more detailed description of Araiyar. Appar Peruman Tiruvayattril Kailasathaiye kandu paravasam aடைந்தார். உங்களுக்கு அங்கே போகவே பிடிக்கவில்லை போலிருக்கிறது. ஒருவேளை நீங்களும் வீர வைஷ்ணவர்கள் ஆகிவிட்டீர்களா என்ன? Kundavai asks his brother, why don't you want to come to Tiruvayar? Appar Swami saw Kailasam in Tiruvayar. You don't want to come there. Have you also become a Sri Vaishnava that you don't want to come there? And Arulmozhi's reply is also interesting. அப்படியெல்லாம் ஒன்றுமில்லை. திருவையாறு சென்றால் அப்பர் பெருமானை போலே போக வேண்டும். He says, it's not like that. if I go to Thiruvayaru, I want to go there like Upper Peruman went. And she asked, how did Upper Peruman go? அவருடைய பாடலையே சொல்லி இருக்கிறாரே, யாதும் சுவடுபடாமல் என்றார், without any hint, ஆடம்பரம் ஏதும் இல்லாமல், without any pomp pageantry, without showing who he was. He went with ordinary pilgrims who were carrying puja samagri like the pushpa, water and all that. Adiyar கூட்டத்தின் பின்னால் சென்றார். He went along with the devotees. Because he went like that, he was able to see Kailasham, he says. அங்கே இந்த ராஜரீக ஆடம்பரங்களுடன் சென்றால் நாமும் இறைவனை தரிசிக்க முடியாது. ஜனங்களும் சுவாமி தரிசனத்தை மறந்துவிட்டு நம்மை சுற்றி சூழ்ந்து கொண்டு நிற்பார்கள். The humility of the crown prince or the king to be. What did Appar see? What does the Thiruvayaru see? You can see the illustration here. Appar sees Shiva and Parvati and the Vahana, and it is the Kailaya Kachi which he gets, and that gets enacted at the Thiruvayaru temple even now. The Thirukailaya Kachi, where he will come in the Velli. It is to resemble the snow-clad mountain Kailasha is the silver Vahana. He comes in the silver Kailaya Vahana, and that happens even today. Tiruvadirai, this is the description we get from Kalki. Tiruvadirai திருவிழாவை முன்னிட்டு ஐயாரப்பரும் அறம் வளர்த்த நாயகியும் திருவையாற்றின் விசாலமான மாட வீதிகளில் திருவோலக்கம் எழுந்தருளினார்கள். வெள்ளிப்பணி மூடிய கைலேங்கிரியை நினைவூட்டுமாறு வெள்ளியினால் அமைந்த கைலாச வாகனத்தில் அன்று சுவாமியையும் அம்மனையும் அலங்கரித்து வீற்றிருக்க செய்திருந்தார்கள். That is the Kailasa Vahana that we talked about. Music, dance, procession, all of that is described. Then Sembiyan Madevi asks Sendan Amudan, who is present there, to sing the Appar Padhiyam on his darshan at Thiruvayaru. And this is the verse Sendan Amudan sings. மாதர்பிறை கண்ணியானை மலையான் மகளோடும் பாடி போதுடு நீர் சுமந்தேத்தி புகுவார் அவர்பின் புகுவேன் யாதும் சுவடுபடாமல் ஐயார் அடைகின்ற போது காதன் மடப்பிடியோடும் களிர் வருவன கண்டேன் கண்டேன் அவர் திருப்பாதம் கண்டறியாதன கண்டேன். What did I see? I saw what I had not seen before. He sees Kalir, that is elephant, as a pair, that is a male and a female elephant. Everything appears to him as Shiva and Shakti. And the 10 verses he talks about various birds and animals which he sees, the peacock and peahen, and what are the other, all the elephant and all of them as a pair, he says. He sees them as a pair. And what he sees on Thiruvayaru streets that day is, he says, that is the Kailasha that I saw. I had not seen it before, but I have seen it here. But what I have seen here, I have not seen before. Kanden, Kanden, our Tirupadam Kanden. I saw him, and Kandariyadana Kanden. Appar reached the history of the Padikam, I would explain. It is also explained there. At an advanced age, Appar Swami started on a pilgrimage to Kailasa. He walked a long distance towards north, but he fainted on the way. At that time, an old person appeared before him and asked him, "Where are you going in search of Kailasha? Go to Thiruvayaru on the banks of Ponni." Ponni is the Kaveri river, and Arulmozhi Varman as the Ponnian Selvan, the one who was rescued by river Ponni. We get the title of the book as Ponnian Selvan also. And that person tells Appar Swami that is Bhuloka Kailasam, Thiruvayaru. Appar reached Thiruvayaru and joined the procession along with other devotees. There appeared on the streets of Thiruvayaru a pair of male and female elephants. They appeared as Shiva and Shakti before Appar. He had the darshan of Ayyarappan and Aram Valartha Nayaki, the Panchanadishwara and the Dharmasambardhani on the Kailasa Vahana. Whatever visions he had that day, the worldly vision and his inner eye, he sang them all beautifully. Kandariyadana Kanden. He saw that day all that he had not seen before. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to me patiently. If I have done any mistakes, it's all my own. For mistakes, if any. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a very befitting ending, which is the Kandariyadana Kanden. what all we never saw in
moved.
the book and the movie, you brought us to light. And it's a really treasure, I must say, because I don't think people can fully grasp the enormity of what you've shared with us, how Kalki introduces each character with a prabandham or Tevaram, and then the journey from Mamallapuram to Kodikkarai is fascinating. Vaijayanthi, this is like really wonderful talk. We just wish, we either part 2 of PS1 highlights all this to us, or maybe some Netflix series has to do justice to this. Honestly, now I request all viewers, whoever is listening, to please go and watch PS1 to know what you've been denied, honestly, from this book. But hats off to Kalki and hats off to Vaijayanthi to bring us to light. We have a few questions.
Sure.
And I just want to take one of them. One of this is that you said that there is also this Kuravai Kuttu which happens on Muruga. Are there any verses that Kalki shares, or is there any religious literature he shares there?
No, Kuravai Kuttu verses are not mentioned. He only mentions that the Kuravai Kuttu happens, and in the second instance, the verses he quotes are from the Silappatikaram.
Okay. And then, of course, we are only having the reference to the movie. The movie shows both the Pandyas and the Cholas praying to Kottravai. So what is the religious background that Kalki gives to this goddess, and can you shed some light on that?
He has not given any specific. He only mentions that how they used to worship Durga, Shakti. We also have in Patishwaram, even today, the Durgayamman Sannadhi there, which is visited by many devotees. And we know that both of them, Kottravai is mentioned by various others as the, the Shakti form that we get to see in the Tamil region, the Chera, Chola, the Pandya regions that we get to see.
Okay, so for the benefit of our viewers, that is what we now worship as Durga. That is the goddess.
Yeah, see, the interpretations might differ, and people may want to say like this is not because there are also controversies about what is Tamil Kadavul and what is the other and all that, not getting into it. But a general perception that we take it as it is a Shakti worship.
Okay. Another question is, of course, if we want to quickly read up these verses, where do we see this? Is in volume 1, 2, or 3? Is there?
I have mentioned these verses there in the PowerPoint presentation. If you go back and scroll, you see 4.3. It is the 4th Tirumurai, 3rd chapter there. So I have quoted everywhere.
Sorry.
So you go to the tevaram.org website, and you get all the Pannir Tirumurais are available, and it is a great resource, phenomenal resource. You can read them in transliteration in many languages. You can read translations also in many languages. So Tirumurai, as Tirumurais it is mentioned, I have mentioned the numbers. So you can go see the numbers there and get those Tirumurais and read them.
Okay, thanks for that. I just want to clarify my question. My question was, the question is, in Ponnian Selvan, which volumes can we see these references so that we can go back and...
except for one volume, I think in volume 4, which does not have any verses mentioned. The first volume has copious ones. The last volume, of course, has the Tiruvayar Padikam. The second also has some, and only 4th will not have. All other volumes have the verses.
Okay, so we can always look up each of these.
Even Ponnian Selvan is available in full on the internet, chapter wise. You can go scroll through them and read them up.
Yes, we definitely want to, because our identification, for example, with Poongrilli is only that very, very sensuous song in the movie. But here she is singing about Shiva in this very...
No, she is singing a very secular song, actually, as she travels in the boat, because she is like forlorn, you don't get to know who's that lover she is singing about, or like who she is missing or something. Sentan Amudan incidentally is her relative, a kind of fiancé, but she was not interested in marrying him, though Sentan Amudan was interested in marrying her and all that. she throughout keeps singing that, but she's also a bhakta, that you see that how she's introduced. She is singing a song about the seas and all the turmoil in her life and all that. But she says, like, to get peace of mind, perhaps now I should go to the temple and ask the butler to sing a Tirumurai.
Yes. In fact, I wanted to highlight how you shared that Kalki is not just like recording history. He's actually helped in giving us more information about this very ancient temple, about which there's really nothing known in Kodikkarai, So that was a great piece of information.
No, what actually I did not realize any of it when I first read Ponnian Selvan. I was in school when Ponnian Selvan came as a serial in Kalki, when Kalki stopped publishing for some years and restarted publication. So at that time, even at a later reading, I did not realize. Only now, maybe wise with age, I can say, I was astounded that how in this book, he makes Nadamunigal and Nambiyandar Nambi characters, two pivotal figures in the Bhakti Sampradaya in both segments of Saiva and Vaishnava, and you find both of them in the book. They appear there as characters showing what they are going to do and what they will do. Even if not connected with the story per se, he introduces the line about Adi Shankara's birth and hints at Swami Ramanuja's birth.
Yes, that's
so
true.
It is only a rereading that I could see through, what all has been done in the novel.
Yes, that's great. Yeah, it's wonderful. Actually, you really took us to the worlds of Mangayar Karasi and the Tiruvayyaru and the other things. So it's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Vaijayanthi. And I request all this video will be available on YouTube. Please listen to it and enjoy more of what Kalki has shared in the form of devotion. And then also watch PS1 to see the difference. And particularly the scene where the actor Rahman just pulls out the Rudraksha and throws it, that scene just stays in your mind. It's a powerful scene in the movie, but it has a completely different meaning when you see it, when you compare it with the novel. So this is a wonderful session. I think these are the few questions we have. Anything, and we're very happy to have us with you. And we look forward to more sessions. As I said, Hinduism Alive is actually about how this Hindu tradition is living amidst us in all forms, whether it's music, art, dance, or novels. So this is a great opportunity. The first one itself, we started with a bang, and we have to have more.
Oh, I didn't know it was the first one. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I never realized it. It was a casual conversation we had, and you pushed me on to do this.
That's it. And then I think there is some question. I think let me see. I think Mr. Karthik, do you want to ask something? Do you want to unmute and ask, or you want to put it in the chat? You've raised your hand.
Can I ask Madam Vaijayanthi a question?
Yes,
please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the wonderful session, Madam. It's giving too much information in a short span of time for us to grab. And I have one question. I'm not sure whether is it directly related or not. And what I heard that Ganesha worship is started by in the 12th century. Paranchodi bring the statue from Vadapi. This is how Ganesha worship is introduced into the Tamil Nadu. Any fact to confirm this?
See, I am right now immediately not able to tell about the date of it. I can only say like what I have seen. You find Pillayar in the temples of Pallava temples of Kanchi. And I am not able to immediately give you the date of the temple that is there, Pillayarpatti temple. It is considered one of the earliest temples. So we get all this from the period of Pallavas. So the exact date I am not able to convey right now. I'm like lost today in whatever I was doing, so I can't recollect. Sorry.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is, Madam, because it's contradict with Rajaraja Chola's history. As,
yeah, because Rajaraja Chola's later date. No, Pallavas had come before him. Pallava and Badami also happened before that.
Oh, is it? I mean, Pallavas period. I mean, I thought was 12th century and Rajaraja.
No.
Chola period was
Pallavas.
10th century.
The Pallava Chalukya happens in the 7th, 8th centuries.
Oh, okay. Then it makes sense. That's what I feel that I was thinking that is the 12th century. Then the date is contradicting. That's what
12th century, actually, the Chola Empire itself starts waning from the 12th, from 13th century. So the after Pallavas only, you will see even in Ponnian Selvan that it is the Pallavas had lost their this thing and Cholas had taken over Mamallapuram.
Yeah, okay. Now I got the picture. Thanks very much, ma'am.
Yes.
I think then, of course, there's some feedback that the talk was very good and they've appreciated your talk. We come to the end now and we will close with a closing prayers.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a comment that this is a beautiful session, bringing alive the book and how bhakti is the way all the time. Vasanti has this to comment.
Thank you.
Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu, Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu, Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu, Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhaved. Om Shanti. So do stay in touch with Hindu Center. We have lots and lots of programs both online and on-site on Hinduism. Thank you very much and good night and happy Pongal.